If you're running an e-commerce brand in 2024 and beyond, then all that you need to focus on is your ad creative acquisition processes. Now, if you don't know what the hell that means, then you definitely should stick around and watch this video to the end, because right now and moving forward, it is all that is going to matter for your e-commerce business to succeed. So today I'm going to pull back the curtains of our 7-figure ad creative project management system that companies pay me thousands of dollars per month to manage for them, and that a hand figure of my 6-figure per month students are using right now to get creative for their brands. All right, so we are inside of my computer now, and you see this kind of Notion dashboard right here that has a Kanban style project management view here. It has a calendar, it has the video ad that we're going to be sourcing, producing, editing, and testing with advertising, and our image ads. Now, so that this video isn't an hour long, I'm just going to show you the high level structure of how we approach the content acquisition process so that you can build out a tool similar to this that works for you, whether it's in ClickUp, Notion, Asana, Google Sheets. It doesn't matter, whatever works for you and however you want to customize this. Just know that this is the most up-to-date version that has worked very well for us. All right, so this main section is where all of the magic happens, because it's where we update the most recent brief content that it is that we're sourcing for our brand. Now, what a brief means to you might be different than how we define a brief, but a content brief is essentially universally understood to be an area that you store ideas for new content that you plan on getting for your business. Whether it's organic content, video content, images, paid advertising creatives, just think of it as a document that stores the ideas for that new content. Now, for us, each brief can have anywhere between 3 to 24 unique ad creatives that we're able to go ahead and test with paid ads. But you can determine how to organize your content however best suits you and your business. Now, over here on the left-hand side is where we kind of have our SOPs and our quick links. So we have a link to Google Drive, that's our briefs link, and that houses all of our documents. It houses our final content, our raw content, everything in an organized way that aligns with this project management system. Then we have our content sheet. That's where we actually rename all of the creatives that we source so that it's intuitive when the media buyer goes to launches it on whatever ad platform it is that they're advertising on, so we can keep track of things in a linear testing fashion, right? And then this is our creator Google Sheet. That's where we essentially organize the creator sourcing for a particular brand. And so if we are going out and looking for female creators for a fitness brand, for example, then we might go and prospect 50 or 100 creators to find 3 or 4 that are going to be really good and reliable that we can work with long-term on that brand. Now, over here is where we house our SOPs. SOPs are standard operating procedures, and they are incredibly essential in any business that you're operating because it shares how to do specific tasks, right? Think checklists, videos, bullet points, so that the person that comes in to do this role knows exactly what it is that you expect of them. Now, you might be thinking, hey, Kyle, I'm a one-man team and I just have a video editor. Do I still need these SOPs? And the answer is absolutely, because you should hold yourself accountable to what things are working well, what things aren't, and document that process. You don't want to be the one who's actually running this entire operation in this system for the rest of time. You want to hire people that are better than you at these things so you can get better content, better ad performance, scale your business, make more money, etc. Now, you'll notice that each of these SOPs align with a stage of the content acquisition process. So we have ideation when it comes to coming up with content ideas. We have filming when it comes to sourcing creators and actually sourcing the raw content for the creatives that we're trying to source, whether it comes to the editing for the kind of post-production team to understand what's expected of them for image ads, video ads, etc. And then we have advertising. So what is required of the media buyer or of you, if you're the one doing your media buying, to actually test this content and have this efficient feedback loop between whoever is advertising and whoever is coming up with the creative ideas to make sure that both of those areas of the business are on the same page. And then we have an organizational, just a general organizational SOPs on how we organize our content, our briefs, our final ads, our draft ads, our revisions, all of that stuff in our Google Drive so that we can always come back to that and that everyone knows how we organize things, how we communicate with each other for feedback to make sure that this system runs smoothly. All right, so now I have 4 templates for how we essentially kickstart this process. And I'm going to show you the 4 core types of briefs that we create for our e-commerce brands. However, there's dozens of different ways that you can structure this depending on your preferences for your business. So again, I'm not saying that this is the right way. This is just what's worked for us. All right, so we have these 2 templates here within Notion. One of them is what we call repurpose briefs. The other one is what we call new content briefs. That's why we label them R and N. And R just essentially means that we're going to be using existing content that we've already sourced or that the brand already has. Whereas a new content brief is content that we intentionally are going to go out and get a creator and source raw content in a very specific way that we want it curated. And then of course we have images and we have videos. So if you value things like stop motion graphics, then you can totally add additional creative variation types. Now, the only core difference between these 2 templates is that this one doesn't have a filming stage because we're going to be using existing repurposed content. So it's just just going to have the idea. And then once we have that idea and we've found raw content, or the creative strategist has found the raw content for this project, we're going to go ahead and tell the editor, they're just going to edit it. And then we're going to go ahead and advertise it, right? So it's just these 3 core stages. Whereas when we look at the new content template, you'll see that we have the ideation, we have the filming stage, the content editing, and the advertising stage. And you can see that these little checklists inside of here, they actually align with this Kanban board that we have. So let's say I'm creating a brief for image ads and I want to have custom content with a UGC creator for those image ads. Then I'm going to select the new content template, right, for this brief process. And then you're going to see we have ideation, filming, content editing, and advertising. Then I'm going to assign this to the person who is responsible for the stage that we are currently in. Now, there's a lot of cool things you can do within Notion, such as set up simple automations. So if you have someone who is responsible for the creator sourcing, you can have an automation to where when you move this to the filming stage, it automatically assigns and delegates that task to that UGC manager or that creator manager, and it removes the ownership of the person who was responsible for the previous stage. Now, in this case, since we're sourcing images, we're going to select image. And then generally when we come up with an idea for a brief, we want to have a due date in mind that we actually want to launch this. So let's say I want to launch these ads on June 10th. Then I'm going to set that date here, and I'll show you why that's important in a moment. And then lastly, depending on the type of business that you run, if you're selling to other countries, you might want to translate that creative in different languages. And that's why we have this language section. So now that you kind of understand the core stages of the content acquisition process, you're probably like, what the heck are these statuses? So the statuses are the progress that you are in within a specific stage. So if I haven't started the creation of this brief, then the status is going to be to do or not started. If I have started it and want to indicate that to the rest of the team so that they don't bug me about starting it, I'm going to put in progress. If I've completed it, but there's this approval process that's required and I need someone else to look it over and give me feedback, then I'll mark it as completed. And then maybe I'll tag whoever it is that I want feedback from, as opposed to assigning the individual who owns this stage. Because generally we only want one person to own a core stage and have them be responsible for the end-to-end process, even if we do need someone to come in and approve something within that stage. If it needs revisions, then whoever is responsible for providing feedback, they're just going to mark it as not approved. And then the person who is the owner of that core stage knows that, hey, they're going to have to go through a revision process. If that does take place, then they'll mark it as revised. They'll tag that person who's responsible for, the approval process. And then hopefully it'll go ahead into this approval stage, right? Once it's approved, it'll move over into that next core stage. So again, that's just to keep track of how the individual person that owns that stage, right? How far along with the process that they are in, or what's maybe needed from other people who are involved in that stage as well, but that don't own it. So again, usually that person is going to be like the founder of the company if it's a small business. So the creative strategist might be responsible for the brief ideation, but the founder wants to have that last say as to whether or not it's a good idea or a bad idea. Now, in my opinion, the quicker that you can actually override this approval process and you can trust that team member that's in place, the fewer the friction that there will be in this acquisition process, because you'll be tagging people, getting comments, notifications, and there's not really a super smooth and organized way of reducing the clutter in your Notion inbox or the amount of places that you're getting tagged, other than reducing the need to be tagged in the first place. So now, as you can see, in each of these core stages, there's a checklist that's associated with it, and then a team member that's responsible for it. So what I recommend is just having that team member's name in a bracket here, not tagged, because then everyone's going to get a ton of notifications every time you create a new template, but rather just in these brackets so that we know who is responsible for this core thing. And then I'm a big fan of hyperlinking specific things so that if we ever do need to go and approve something, or if internal team members have to communicate amongst each other, that it's really easy to find the thing that we're talking about. And we don't have to spend that extra 5 minutes going to Google Drive, searching for this here, going to Slack, going somewhere else. Something that we always like to say is that if there's an opportunity to have a local cost for a global benefit, we want to take it every time. So if the creative strategist can take 2 extra seconds to link something, but it saves 5 minutes collectively across multiple team members having to look for that thing, then it's worth that original person just taking that extra time to do that, right? And make everyone else's life easier. So once those steps are done for a specific stage, I'll usually go ahead and just check mark it so that we know that that previous stage is completed, out of sight, out of mind, and we can move it to the next stage, right? Which would be filming. Once we move it to the filming stage, you can actually set an automation to where, let's say your UGC manager ends up getting tagged, so they know that that is ready for them for whatever the scope of work is that you assign to them. They're going to be doing things like sourcing the creator and then shipping the product to the creator, sourcing the raw content, right? And then whoever is responsible for the approval, again, if that's necessary, is going to check this off to make sure that the raw content is aligned with what it is that we were looking to get. Then generally we're going to move things into the editing stage, and that's where the editor is going to complete the draft content, which is the not approved kind of final ads. ads. And then once we do go ahead and approve those ads, or if it has to undergo a revision process before getting approved, then we just make sure that it's checked off so that everyone knows, hey, these ads were looked at by the person who has that final say and they're approved, right? So now that editing stage is essentially complete. I'm just doing this at a fast pace. Usually each of these stages will take a little bit of time and they'll go through these individual statuses so that everyone on the team knows the progress of that specific stage. And then once we've completed that editing stage, it's time to advertise that content. So for advertising, some good things to keep in mind are like, hey, do we organize this content in a way that makes sense for the media buyer, right? Did we apply specific naming conventions to this content that's intuitive and that allows us to test it in a linear way? Did we actually launch these ads? And then did we review the testing stage and the KPIs that we received so we can pass that data along and pass that feedback to the creative team to make sure that the next round of creatives, they take that data into consideration for any of the ideas that they're coming up with. Now, once this advertising stage is done, we actually have an automation that automatically archives it, right? If we mark this as done, which we never want to select at any other stage because then it'll archive it prematurely, then again, it automatically puts this in the archive section. So if we have to go back into a particular brief and we want to look and see why that set of creatives did well or didn't do well, we can always pop back into this archive section and see all of the existing briefs that we worked with in the past. Now, the video and the image section is specifically if you have video or image editors or you have different creators that you maybe want to bring in here. And it's just to be able to get a high level overview of what video ads you're working on and what image ads you're working on. Otherwise, it's pretty much this exact same view, just with filters. So if you wanted to remove these, you could. If you wanted to add more for different types of creative variations, you could also totally do that. And then lastly, we have this content calendar. So you just saw me assign a date for when we wanted to complete these creatives. That's generally what we set the date to. And then if it takes us 1 or 2 weeks to test it, that's totally fine. We just want to be able to look back on, hey, when did we actually finalize these creatives? That way we can plan ahead, right? And what we like to do is generally 1 brief per week that again has anywhere between 3 and 24 different unique creatives. I recommend anywhere between 3 to 6 if this is your first time kind of setting up a creative acquisition system, because it can get very overwhelming very quickly if you haven't gotten a ton of reps in. But once you do spend a few months trying to work something in like this to your business, then it'll start to become second nature and you'll start to be able to increase the volume of creatives that you can source and that you can go ahead and test. And generally, you're going to see a correlation between the volume of creatives that you're testing and the volume of creatives that are actually successful in the ads manager and that help you scale. So this is just one tool that we use within our arsenal of tools for the entirety of our creative acquisition process. We have our Google Drive formatting and structuring. We have our creator sheet and our creator outreach and acquisition and negotiation processes. We have our brief templates and our entire ideation process where we use a combination of consumer psychology and AI and competitor research and an entire discovery process around the customer avatars that are associated with each of the brands that we are sourcing content for. And then of course, we actually have our advertising testing processes, right? Which these days is becoming a lot more consolidated and simpler, and you don't want to complicate this process. But again, if you're looking to scale up your e-commerce business, then you need a tool that is somewhat like this, or you need people, or you need some system that allows you to get this consistent content and creative flow if you want to succeed and if you want to thrive. And this tool, these processes encompass about 90% of the important things that are required for your brand to succeed, other than things like your customer support and your backend email and SMS marketing and your product optimization and things like that, and your offer optimization and your landing pages, and honestly, a lot of other things that go into e-commerce, but that only account for a fraction of the success of the brand. So if you found this video helpful in any way, then I highly encourage you to click the link below this video and join the DropSkale Mastermind community. In there, I show you the end-to-end process of how we acquire content and organize our briefs and our content folders and source creators and the whole 9 yards, a little bit more of an in-depth video breakdown of this tool and hundreds of other tools that we use and systems and processes to repeatedly scale dropshipping and D2C e-commerce brands. And since we just started this new community, it's going to be the lowest price that it will ever be at any point in the future. So I highly recommend that you get in as soon as you can. And other than that, I hope to see you in the next video.